G'day, folks. We're doing that new Jubilee video. I didn't want to, but I have to do something for Halloween. Plus, it has been requested of me to address this here shambles. Requested via PayPal, no less, generously. So, against my better judgment, I will indeed get my head down and plough through the same old interminable tat, as always, if you really, really want me to. Because I like you. And I like having a job and such. Let's crack on.
My name's John. It's been 5 years since I directed an episode on this exact same topic, and it has only grown more relevant. So let's jump into our discussion between feminists and men's rights activists.
Well, relevance is relative, isn't it? As the West falls deeper into its misandric funk, the issue of biological sex denial, aka transgenderism, has somewhat snowballed and ballooned, and now people tend to talk about that instead. As the West falls deeper into hatred of its own men, it imports more and more men from the third world, and now people tend to talk about that instead. In both cases, people point to the displaced men as the problem. Men get blamed for everything, and the only solution anyone has is to blame men for the problems caused by blaming men for everything. Because people are idiots! Ideologically possessed idiots caught in a perpetually downward cycling spiral. The roots of the problem, and indeed the seeds, are more relevant than ever, but people are failing to address them because they're far too busy swiping haphazardly at the creeping ivy erupting from those seeds. I would thank you, John, for addressing the origin of the problem, but something tells me you're only going to plant more seeds. We'll see.
Men already have all their rights. If you agree, step forward.
You're going to have a debate between people who already agree on the proposition. Is this your first time holding a debate? Oh wait, it's not. You had the but you've learned nothing, probably because of the flawed way you conduct learning exercises. That thing I said about perpetually cycling downward spirals. Never mind.
I hate the name.
Sorry, finger slipped. Start over.
I hate the name men's rights activists because it does imply that as if our rights are being taken away. The problem that men face is more existential. The patriarchy conditions men, or assigned male at birth people, to pretty much just keep your feelings shut down.
Okay, that is a feminist that you've put on the side of the men's rights activists. And I mean feminist descriptively. That right there is a cheap sponge that has sucked up a bunch of feminist dogma, like the engorged phagocyte it is. Phagocyte? I don't know. Was that too early? Well, this isn't getting monetized. And now the phagocyte in question is squeezing those corrosive juices into our exposed eyes and ears at the speed of a galloping gish. Did you seriously think we wouldn't notice? I'm going to skip most of this section because I didn't come here to listen to gender studies freshmen boning up for their end of semester exam. I came here for an argument. No, you didn't. Silence.
The problem is for some men, all they have is their notion of masculinity to the point that they cannot let it go and they can't see anything else other than that. When the actuality is, again, gender isn't real. We're just plants with complicated emotions. When I look at people, I just see human-shaped flowers.
I'm just gonna jump in for this soundbite because, frankly, it's glorious. First of all, no, men don't let go of their masculinity because they're not bloody supposed to. You mentaloid. Any more than a human being is supposed to let go of their humanity? Secondly, You're right. Gender isn't real. It's an infinitely malleable term coined by mad scientists in order to hypothesize that biological sex isn't real. But biological sex is real. It's why we have sex organs, and it's why plants have sex organs, for instance, in the form of flowers. Congratulations, that might be the stupidest thing I've ever heard from any organism, and I've listened to the eerie creaking sound of rhubarb accidentally growing upside down.
You can't co-opt the language of it being a social justice, a rights-based movement.
No, that's the problem is that, like, I have this thing I say, I feel like saying that, like, men have feelings is kind of like saying all lives matter, because men only ever bring up their problems directly after women bring up theirs, so it just sounds dismissive.
Men don't tend to bring up their problems out of the blue because they know no one cares. What they do, sometimes, some of them, is respond situationally and logically to the claim that women have problems and men don't. Because that's usually what's going on. People selectively forget that men have any problems at all, and then, hey presto, women have all the problems. For instance, someone might say, women have to bleed from their nether regions for 5 days a month. It's awful. It's unconscionable. What do men have to deal with? Nothing. And to that I might respond, well, one thing men have to deal with is a complete absence of other people's sympathy for them, especially whenever they're compared with women. For the most part, men and women have the same problems. Health, money, career, family, etc. But when men have those problems, nobody gives a shit. People will spontaneously pretend that men have no problems because women exist. And that in itself is a pretty significant problem. It's a meta problem that intensifies all the other problems. Do you see? No, you don't. That's the problem. Live from the problem hole. Get your problem ball up in it. But, I mean, if you're looking for something we can compare with periods, some kind of quirky issue of the genitals, all right then, men have their sex organs on the outside of their body. Right there. One swift kick in that direction, even from a woman or a child, can leave a man bent double in paralyzed agony, writhing on the floor in the fetal position, potentially hospitalized and possibly rendered infertile. It's a problem they face not just 5 days a month, but all the time for their whole lives. It's not as if people don't know this. Everybody knows this. But they'll spontaneously forget it for the sake of pretending that women have all the problems. That's what I'm talking about. Even the problem of having a bright red kill switch on your body, an emergency stop button right where everyone can reach it, even that is nothing compared with the meta problem that everyone will actively and selectively pretend it's not there because women have a different problem. But women can't have abortions in some parts of the world. Yeah, neither can men. Men can't have children unless the mother says so, and men can't not have children unless the mother says so. Men can't raise their children unless the mother says so, and men can't abdicate responsibility for their children unless the mother says so. Women can do all of these things unilaterally. Men have none of these reproductive rights in most parts of the world, including the parts from which you and I are speaking. But again, we don't tend to bring these things up out of the blue, because we know no one cares. It's generally when someone proclaims that women have all the problems and men have none, that's when some people will put their hand up and say, that's not true. All you're doing is dismissing men's problems. And then you go, you're just being dismissive of women's problems! Because you're a bigoted, scramble-brained hypocrite. You falsely accuse those whom you hate of doing what you are doing, and you don't even know you're doing it. I wonder how long it will take for someone to demonstrate my point.
The question was, do men have all of their rights? How can I say that they have all of their rights when I'm finding guy after guy after guy that is devastated he can't talk to his children?
I want to look at women's stories as to why they don't want to get married. And I could go interview 1,000 women. You're looking for these kinds of men.
Well, that didn't take very long at all now, did it? Here's an obvious example of an equal right that men don't have. I don't want to talk about a right that men don't have. Then why the fuck did you sit down, you dopey cunt?
Going back to the family court thing, because we want to talk about traditional relationships, and that's how it should be. The mom should stay home with the kids, and the dad is the provider and all that. But then when it comes to the family court, we want to be like, oh, dads need 50% custody.
You want to talk about traditional relationships, as you call them, but we're talking about family courts, who will screw the father over no matter what. They don't give a rat's ass if you're a working dad or a stay-at-home dad, otherwise known as a deadbeat.
But you don't even know your kid. You've been off providing all this time, and the only reason now you want 50% custody is because that's the only thing that still connects you to the woman, or whatever up reason you have. But it has nothing to do with the children at heart. It has to do with, I'm their father, I deserve 50% custody. But where were you the first 10, 15 years that we were raising the kids?
Well, nowadays, both parents are typically alienated from the children because they both have to work 2 jobs each just to afford the goddamn groceries. Thanks to this opportunity economy, I believe it's called. So now what? I guess that means neither parent cares about the kids and we can just relinquish them to the custody of the oh-so-caring state. The very same state that crashed your fucking economy and has very strong opinions about what can and should be done with children's genitals. But this is fine. This is fine.
Men choose not to support their families. They waive responsibility.
Far more
Many times.
That's very sexist to say that. To assume that fathers don't care about their kids.
No, I mean, then why aren't they actively fighting for their kids?
They are. It wouldn't be an issue if it didn't happen. It's an issue for a reason.
You'll notice the feminists on the left there are asserting, through nothing but their own biases, that men are not nurturing.
I know at least for you and possibly for Pearl, you guys want to reaffirm traditional masculine roles, which does not assume that men are the nurturing ones. And if that's going to be the case, then you're going to continue to run into the problem where men aren't going to get custody because women are going to be seen as the nurturing gender.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's men's fault. By the way, it's not our fault that we think it's men's fault. It's your fault. Because you don't think it's all men's fault. It is all. So, and I cannot stress this enough, tiresome. Yes, all I'm doing is pointing out hypocrisy, and no, I don't expect to get through to people who will cry out in pain as they strike you. Just stay away from them. They are extremely dangerous.
Women experience more sexism than men. If you agree, please step forward.
I'm seeing a theme here. We'll assert a talking point that we know feminists will agree with, and then we'll let them spew their propaganda at each other, and then we'll let them spew it at the non-feminists. First, we'll let the prosecution make its case, and then we'll let the prosecution talk over the defense counsel. And you call this middle ground.
Misandry, men's feelings get hurt, but when it comes to misogyny and like sexism, women get hurt.
Misogyny, parentheses, sexism.
But when it comes to misogyny and like sexism.
You don't think I didn't notice that, Sonny? If sexism means misogyny and it does not mean misandry, then it rather stands to reason that women experience more sexism than men because that's how you define it. It's like defining grape as something that only men can do and then going, well, look at that. Men commit 100% of the grapes according to my definition. What are the chances? Yeah, and I do mean grapes. You can do it with anything. You can do it with any fruit. When a woman ass-fucks someone to death with a pineapple, it doesn't count as ass-fucking someone to death with a pineapple, but it does when a man does it. Therefore, men do 100% of the ass-fucking people to death with a pineapple. If a woman kills a woman, it doesn't count as femicide. But when men do it, it does. Therefore, men do 100% of the femicide. That one's real, by the way. Already happening in Spain. You can do it with anything, and you will do it with anything. Words mean what I say they mean, and reality is what I say it is. And it's not just you, it's the fucking legal system. You pathetic, brainwashed, self-cannibalizing zombie. Get to fuck and stay there.
When most people in power are men, and then they can abuse that power by, like, the common joke of, oh, she slept her way to the top. Like, that wouldn't be such a common joke if it weren't for women being sexualized and experiencing sexism so common that it's just a regular joke that we all just accept and just go with, ah, ha, 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 she slept her way to the top.
My dear, she did sleep her way to the top. Isn't it funny how we all know who we're talking about? Also, notice that men don't have the option of sleeping their way to the top. It's very much a female privilege. And a female privilege is the exact opposite of sexism against women.
And not only that, but men are bigger than us. So if they want something from us at any point, they could just take it. They can. And a lot of times they do. And you just have to sit there and take it.
False. The law will not prevent women from hurting men, but it will prevent men from hurting women. In most circumstances. I really hope we eventually get onto the subject of biological men competing in women's sports or Muslim grooming gangs, so we can watch the spontaneous amnesia take hold behind the wildly darting eyeballs of this absolute genius here. Place your bets now.
Men are each other's worst enemy. I feel like a lot of the sexism that men face that really impacts them is from other men. Men make fun of each other for, like, getting assaulted. Facts. Men make fun of each other for, like, not getting the girl. Men, like, these are things that if men really wanted, if these men's rights activists really wanted to change this notion, they would be treating their fellow man better.
They're doing it again! It's men's fault! Men are to blame because they're always blaming men for everything. Not me. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying men do it, but not me. Not even while I'm saying it. I mean the men who support each other's rights. They're the ones who aren't supporting each other. And don't you dare blame women for anything. Bruh, my brain hurts. This is how I know you don't have a brain. If you did, you wouldn't be able to get through this shit without having a fucking aneurysm.
I think what's important to recognize is that misandry is not a systemic issue. It's not ingrained in us.
Once upon a time, it was ingrained in you. But now there's hardly anything left of you. Now you're ingrained in it. You are a single seed oil-soaked grain in an industrial silo of misandry. You can't think for yourself. You can't even think. All you can do is blame men for everything. Reactively, recursively, irrationally, forever. Remember, folks, NPCs are not born that way. They have been drained systemically.
Let's bring in our disagreeers.
Palette cleanser time. Your boy, Blue Orange 22, is here to talk some sense. I'm going to let him do so for 21 seconds or less at a time, so as to avoid copyright grief. The safe word is banana, as always.
So I would disagree that you say misandry is not systemic. Cultural misandry is evident in a lot of the laws that neglect men. Misandry is why homeless men don't have as many shelters. It's why we don't take male victims of domestic violence as seriously. It's why men's health care is underfunded.
Banana.
And there's a psychological phenomenon called the women are wonderful effect, where society and people have less empathy for men in a general sense. Now, there may be some nuance there, as there could be some negative consequences for women, but overall, we see social welfare programs and laws mostly disfavor men.
Banana.
And even if it's a male politician who supports that law, he's still catering to his voters. And the fact that a male politician makes a decision doesn't resurrect the 19-year-old draftee who was killed in battle. So when you say that misandry isn't a thing, I completely disagree. It's almost become fashionable.
Banana.
Misandry is almost a fashionable trait among the left. And I'm not a right-winger, but I almost feel pushed this way because when I try and talk about men's issues, I get some very sharp reactions from the left.
Yep, you're getting some rather effervescently sour ones right now. Not necessarily just from the left, though. Misandry smothers the entire political spectrum and transcends it. Like a shit-powered rocket blasting off into another dimension. Observe.
So I just want to respond to that just because it was specifically directed at me.
No, it was directed at all of you. Crazy Face over there was quite visibly champing at the bit, but I think she's happy to let you take the blame. Amusing.
In terms of misandry not being systemic, I agree that those issues exist, but a lot of what you're referring to is just the relationship between men having disadvantages due to like socioeconomic status and comparing that to benevolent misogyny, which does actually otherize women and is a form of dehumanization.
Misogyny is sexism against women. Misandry isn't real, it's just benevolent sexism against women. You see how that works? Y'all thought the height of bald-faced gaslighting was, it's not happening, ... it is happening, but it's a good thing? But at least that follows a linear path with a beginning and an end. To feminists, this is peanuts. Their narcissist's prayer is misandry is not happening, and if it is, it's actually misogyny, but we're going to continue letting this kind of misogyny happen because it's not happening. Repeat ad infinitum. This has been going on for your entire lifetime, folks, all of you. And to this day, it's only getting more and more ingrained in more and more people. It is not so 2016. It's just that you gave up after 2016 and you let them win while you dick around playing whack-a-mole with the small fires they created. But I repeat myself.
The reason why misandry isn't systemic is because we don't live in whatever the opposite of we don't live in a matriarchy.
Why do you think we live in a patriarchy? I suppose it's just a coincidence that you were taught to believe we live in a patriarchy. Systemically. Starting with the education system and continuing into the mass media system. Regulated all the way by the government system. A patriarchy wouldn't let that happen. It would do the opposite of that. A right-wing system would tell you to fight the left wing. A left-wing system would tell you to fight the right wing. What would a matriarchy do? Why am I even here? Why am I still saying this shit? Nobody listens, nobody cares. Why would anyone care? Fucking failing species.
And I just want to add that, the reason there are women-only spaces or women-only shelters is because men are the perpetrators of most of the crime. Now, they are also the victims of a lot of the crime.
Most of the crime. They're the victims of the overwhelming majority of the crimes, especially the violent crimes. Especially the crimes committed by women. But women get away with most of their crimes, especially their violent crimes against men. When women commit domestic violence against men, it is the men who get arrested. The police aren't just biased in that way, they are trained to do that. They are obliged to do that. This ought to be a jolly good reason for men to have safe spaces away from women, because men need all the help they can get, and they're not going to get it from the police. Even if men were only 10% of the victims of gendered violence, that would at least mean they should get 10% of the safe spaces. They get 0. Bupkis, the center of the donut that is your head. Some of us would like to change this. Unfortunately, it would mean appealing to the legal system, and the legal system is extremely biased against men and in favor of women. Systemically!
Do you have an experience to pull from that you want to share?
I've been hit by women before.
I've been stabbed.
Like, I've been hit multiple times by women.
Yeah, we all have. Women hit men reflexively just for telling a slightly edgy joke. Even when they're in love with you, they'll instinctively, bop you if you say something too spicy. And then when they fall out of love with you, they stab you. And they blame it on you. And they get away with it. And you get arrested. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I'm supposed to blame men for all of this. But if I do, it's my fault.
But if I were to go to the police, you know who they would remove from the house? Me. My ex-wife, when I was going through a divorce, told me that she'd lied to the police in order to file the divorce faster because it was taking too much time.
See, I ain't making this shit up about the effects of the Duluth model and its various descendants. I've simply taken the time for the esoteric activity of listening to men. Having said that, I'm going to skip most of the next section because Nico and Blue Orange are hitting a bunch of points I've already covered, but they're being nice about it. And God bless you, fellas, but that is not what we do on this channel. Because I don't have to. And I won't get edited into an out-of-context hit piece when I say something understandably acerbic. I'm here to take off the gloves and put on the knuckle dusters and go for the throat. Because on this occasion I feel like it. I'm expressing my emotions. On guard.
Patriarchy weaponizes men to be more violent. Women are seen as not culpable for their violence. It strips them of their agency and infantilizes them for when they do commit violence. And you guys are upholding that system.
I know it looks like they brought on the dumbest feminists they could possibly find, right? But believe it or not, this is academic feminism. This is how the education system is teaching them to spin their nonsense. That, what he just said there, what was the truth bookended by blatant lies. These low-watt fucking gurglers just got through telling us men do all the bad things, women only get bad things done to them. This is what we believe as feminists. And now they're going, it's you who does the thing. I can't do it. I can't state it any more concisely than you just did. You batshit asshat anal explosion of 10 million Scoville stupid juice smeared on the side of an upside down festival toilet. How does anyone do this and not be trolling? Are we on candid camera? Like all of us, the entire human race. This is a game show, isn't it? It's a simulation. You're just torturing us to see what will happen. Right, well, you've had your fun. We've figured it out. How do we escape, please? Where's the dev door? If I eat a packet of silica gel, will I wake up from this nightmare? If I jump off a high building and hit the ground at exactly 88 miles an hour, will that do it? Talk to me, please, for the love of the code. Talk to me, because I am not talking to these janky, glitched out excuses for NPCs anymore. I can't fucking take it. Calm down, Mike. Oh, calm down. People are just stupid. They're just really, 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 really stupid. Breathe in, breathe out, stretch, and we're back in the room. Okay, right, let's carry on.
I'm just very confused how you're calling out feminists for like having these crazy views.
That'll be because you're a feminist and you have these crazy views. I know you keep projecting them like a fucking laser onto everyone else, but that's because you're fucking crazy. And, I told myself I wouldn't drink in this one. I promised myself I wouldn't drink in this one. Oh, why do people judge me for drinking? Look what I do for a living. Look at it.
Feminism is not a monolith.
Feminism is not a monolith. Let me ask you this. Is there anything you find regrettable about feminism? Is there anything you wish it had done differently? Let me guess, you grew up in a middle-class family.
Yeah.
As a mother, I'm a mother. I have 3 daughters and I have a son. So when I look at the world, I'm looking at the world for how will all of my kids fare well in this world. I don't want anything that's gendered in one way or another. But when we're talking about like this male spaces thing, whenever men enter a space, it becomes their space.
I don't want anything to be gendered. Oh, except space. That's all. As long as men are occupying something other than space, I'm perfectly happy. I don't ask for much.
They're stronger, they're louder, and a lot of times when women feel uncomfortable, we'll just excuse our way out and it's just naturally become a male-only space. That's why most shelters mostly have men, homeless shelters. Like in Denver where I live, all the homeless shelters are mostly men.
I think I'm going to cry. Most homeless shelters are occupied by men because almost all homeless people are men. When there is a divorce or a breakup between a man and a woman, even if the woman is excessively violent, she gets the house, she gets the kids, she gets the car, and he gets to sleep on a bed of concrete nails under a bridge. Or under a busy intersection with his fellow denizens of the intersectional empire. Or if he's lucky, he gets to sleep under a blanket in a homeless shelter, while you continue to spit on him and denigrate the privilege of taking up space that he so rudely and oppressively enjoys. It's just like last time. They're trying their best to edit this to make the feminists sound reasonable and compassionate. And if this is what they left in, then my worst psychedelic fever dreams cannot conceive of what in Satan's engorged portion you left out. By the way, hello again, natalists, especially those of you who think childless people don't belong in positions of power. Do notice, this person is speaking as a mother. Is she the kind of grounded, humble, enlightened upper echelon of the citizens blessed with a sense of perspective and investment in the future, who you want making decisions about your society? While those of us who try to help other people and their families have to shut the fuck up and obey. Do you ever encounter a little bit of food for thought on the matter as you journey across the moral landscape of your impeccable altruism? Never the fuck mind.
The one guy that did try to start a domestic violence shelter for men, and he was like a big men's rights activist, but in the true sense, wanting men to have what you want, like domestic violence resources for just for them. He got so laughed out of the world, the dude ended up unaliving himself.
She's talking about El Silverman.
Earl Silverman?
Yeah.
He was laughed at by feminists. He was harassed by feminists.
He was laughed at by men too.
And men.
Not MRAs.
It was the
not by MRAs.
So you
was
basically
the
want to
mass-
excuse all, like, just shed yourself of all the misdeeds of your movement. Is that what you're trying to do?
The men's movement did not demonize Earl Silverman. It was not MRAs who demonized Earl Silverman.
It was men.
us.
It was
us.
toxic
That's what you're
men.
saying.
Feminists didn't just laugh at him. They destroyed his life's work and shut down any avenue of him ever being able to open a men's shelter, even from his own pocket. They drove him directly to his death, and they sent a clear message that anyone else who tries to help men can expect to suffer the same fate. And now, they are blaming it on men. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not just the worst video I've ever seen, it's the worst anything I've ever seen. I've witnessed my own death as Kali herself dangled me upside down from a trapdoor above the dark remnants of the annihilated universe, and it wasn't as harrowing as this fucking video. And we are 27 minutes in, with 66 minutes to go. I thank you for your generous PayPal request, sir. You know who you are. And I see now why you then sent another generous PayPal donation preemptively apologizing for how unspeakably demonic this video is. You were not wrong. At this point, if the girl from the ring crawled out of my screen, I would hug her and embrace my inevitable fate. We can only hope. All right, next question.
Women's sexual capital gives them an advantage over men. If you agree, please step forward.
All right, it's merciful of you to introduce a motion that's clearly true. Such things are kryptonite to feminists, as you can see. But, yeah, I'm going to skip most of this section as well for the same principle.
All right, let's bring in our disagreeers.
I timed it, by the way, and that was 1 minute and 43 seconds. 103 seconds in which the non-feminists got to talk uninterrupted by the feminists. At least in the Jubilee edit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hi there, you mother ficus. You seem to be sitting in the wrong place at all times, which is unusual for a plant.
So I feel like this is perfect for me. So I am a top OnlyFans creator, and I'm also a lawyer.
Okay, that explains some things. It's weird how there doesn't seem to be any OnlyFans prostitutes who advocate for men's rights, or lawyers who, well, I know of one men's rights lawyer. Well, I knew of one men's rights lawyer, Mark Angelucci. He was shot to death 4 years ago, and so was the guy who shot him shortly afterwards. Weird.
I have a lot of money from doing OnlyFans, but I was always also I've never been more vilified either.
You're a lawyer.
For using my sexual capital in order to make a living. Whereas when I was a lawyer and all throughout school, I was always hated. I was always just looked at because I had like a more curvy body and everything. So I do think women can capitalize off of their sexual power, but I also think they are also demonized and vilified.
So you do agree with the motion, and yet you didn't sit down to agree with it. Not that I'm complaining, you're completely full of shit, and I very much enjoyed our brief period of separation. You being vilified for exploiting lonely men was not the question at hand. So if changing the subject is an option, here you go. Men get vilified for being lonely men, while they also get exploited. Perchance have you ever tried to insult a man by calling him an incel? But I'm sure it's just men who do that.
I just think it's very hypocritical.
Whoa! Wow! I'm going to go ahead and leave that as an orphaned statement, Mr. Pineapple Inside Out Cake. Delicious by itself.
And I think if women have a ton of sexual capital, who gave it to us?
Is it the same people who gave you all the fucking money and resources and time and space? Alright, just making sure we're on the same page.
It's not us. We're not the ones that are just deciding, I'm going to be powerful because I have a body. That's not what's happening. It's men that never learned how to deal with their emotions and their feelings and their urges. That wasn't taught to them. So they don't know how to do that. So now they give women all this sexual capital and then also want to vilify us for it and make us the bad guy for it.
Anytime anything happens, feminist women respond by marching naked through the streets. Tax on tampons? Naked march. Climate change? Naked march. Gender studies professor promised you credit for a naked march? Naked march. They do it because they want attention, whether it's positive or negative attention. They want to be gawped at and they want to be vilified because in both cases it gives them further opportunity to play the victim. But in reality, it's nothing but an embarrassment. A childish, narcissistic embarrassment that people only look at through their trembling fingers. Do yourself a favor, make like an out-of-body experience, and get over yourself.
In my personal experience, men only talk to women they want to sleep with.
Yeah.
Then I suppose you only talk to pitcher plants. Venus flytraps, maybe.
I do think that that is a little bit of the natural order of things, but like for instance, I think a big, like my only really interaction with these man spaces or the manosphere spaces are these like red pill podcasts that I've gone on a million times, like Fresh and Fit, whatever, where they bring on women like me that are making all this, oh, you're on OnlyFans, they bring in all these sex workers.
Oh yeah, why do you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's because the same men, their audience that hates us, they're also making me a shit ton of money.
Yeah, you know exactly what you're doing. You exploit men, you get paid for it. You vilify men, you get paid for it. And you play the victim. And you get paid for it.
Exactly. Like you're pretty much a prop for them to make more money because they'll have you on the podcast and you'll be like the eye candy, but they don't actually care about your opinions. They're just using you as a prop to put down.
Yeah,
and so that could feed into their audience.
Kind of like how Jubilee brought these three non-feminists onto the show, only to leave their most cogent and insightful points on the cutting room floor, while they have horrific backward feminist bigotry yelled at them by a bunch of gurning simpletons. And how much did these non-feminist punching bags get paid for their efforts? $50. $50. To fly to Los Angeles and back, as confirmed by Blue Orange 22. You can check out his interview at Badger Livestreams, friend of the show, and check out his channel while you're at it. He didn't get much of a bump from Jubilee, so do go show him some sunshine if you like. All right, let's get on with it.
Who owns like 99% of the actual porn industry in the production studio?
Jews. The opinions of this puppet do not reflect the positions of the management. Moving swiftly on. Next question, please.
Feminism is trying to remove masculinity from society.
Clearly true, but not the whole picture.
You know, I think the best thing to say is probably that they're trying to be masculine. So they're trying to remove what masculinity is today and replace it by a version of femininity that is masculine.
It doesn't really make sense, bro. It's really quite simple. They believe men oppress women everywhere and always have. They call this the patriarchy. So they see biological sex, which they call gender, as a vector of oppression. And so they want to abolish it. And so with one pincer, they drain the femininity out of women, if those women agree to it. And with the other pincer, the larger one, they forcibly drain the masculinity out of men, whether they like it or not. But that doesn't turn men into women and women into men. That's impossible. All it does is land them both in the same place. Neutered. The goal is to turn everyone into the same confusing androgynous bug person who can't reproduce and can't think for themselves. That's what they mean by equality. Complete indistinguishability. It's a nightmare. It's worse than communism. Much worse. It's communism on, well, hormone blockers.
Who's they?
Feminists.
The deep state.
Well, what percent of men actually get custody of their children? It's 50% of their DNA. Why don't they get 50% custody?
All right, let's bring in our disagreeers.
That was 1 minute and 10 seconds, by the way. 70 seconds. That was all the time they got. And yes, a lot of it was lingering on Pearl while she wasn't saying anything. Don't know what that was about.
Men typically get custody of their children way more often than not.
Way more often than not. Fucking solar eclipses happen way more often than not. Terrestrial mass extinction events happen way more often than not. If you consider 5 to be way more than 0, which it is, because any finite number is infinitely bigger than 0. I've heard of weasel words, but that was a litter of embryonic weasel miscarriages. You suck.
When a woman rightfully and honestly gives her experience of domestic violence in the marriage, she's more likely to lose custody of her children.
Lie! Absolute lie! Jesus fucking wept!
There is no issue with men getting custody.
That's not true.
That's absolutely
not true.
You're just making numbers out of your...
What percent of the time do men get custody of their kids?
At least 50% of the time. What you're thinking about?
That is not true.
Notice, Crazy Face said to Pearl, "You're just making numbers out of your, you know what?" When Pearl didn't cite any numbers. She just said it should be 50-50. So Crazy Face goes, "It's more than 0. Because she had no idea. Oh yeah, so how often do men get custody? At least 50? Because she has no idea. She's actually just making numbers out of Pearls. You know what? I'm not simping for Pearl, by the way. I'm just not going to trash her either, unless she says something stupid.
90% of the cases do not even go to family court.
Why would they? 90% of the family court cases give total custody to the mother anyway. So I can pull numbers out of my you-know-what too. So in my country, we don't know what these numbers are because family courts operate in secret. For some reason.
I had the same thought when I first heard it. I would ask, like, why aren't men fighting for custody? But the problem you get is the lawyers will tell them not to even fight because it's so expensive.
Listen very closely as the squawking feminists desperately try to shout down the truth. There are 3 contradictory arguments that you can decipher in the maelstrom of chimp-outs.
And you have a
That's not true.
and you have a 10%.
Men don't even
win
file
rate.
the appropriate paperwork.
Why are you blaming feminism for that?
Wait.
Did you spot them? That's not happening. It's happening, but it's men's fault. It's happening, but why are you blaming feminism for it? Gee, I guess it's because a lot of lawyers are biased against men on account of being feminists. There's one of them sitting 4 fucking feet away from you, you prat!
In my experience, I feel like when it comes to redefining masculinity, that's not even a real concept. We need to abolish gender as a whole.
Did I call it or did I call it?
It's called same side of feminism. I believe in destroying the patriarchy. I believe in destroying the ideas of gender.
All right, we're done with this section. I called it. I nailed it. 3-pointer on the buzzer from the back of the court. Winning! Next question, please.
Men should go to therapy.
No! No, categorically not. You know how I said some lawyers are biased against men because they're feminists? Well, almost every therapist is biased against men because they're a feminist. They have no idea how men think. They have no idea how men heal. They don't care. They just get you to talk about what you're doing wrong, and then they repeat mindless, meaningless platitudes. Catholics have confessionals. The religion of feminism has therapy. It's exactly the same thing, except the Catholic priests do it for free, while the feminist priests do it for extortionate fees. It's an international, superstitious racket that makes Scientology look like a casual game of I Spy. Nope, and thrice nope. Next question.
It's important for women to become mothers. Will the agreeers please step forward?
Well, women doesn't mean all women. By itself, it means some women. Because generally, people should have freedom of movement is a largely uncontroversial statement because we know we're not talking about violent criminals in prison who are people. We don't mean all people, we mean people in general. Without specified specificity, a term is generalized by default. So the motion is, it's important for some women to become mothers. And yes, it's an unequivocal yes, isn't it? I mean, unless you want the human race extinct before the next century, that's surely a unanimous agree. I really hope everyone sits down for this one.
Odd one out, Nico.
One of you? Out of 8? What? Am I taking crazy pills? What the fuck is going on?
Do you think it's in their best interest to become mothers?
Well, I guess that depends on the person, but without mothers, we're not going to continue the human race, right?
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable answer. Are the rest of them just assuming that women means all women? Okay, language changes. That's fine. I guess I didn't get the memo, and I had it on good authority that women are not a monolith, but whatevs. I'm gonna skip ahead through Nico's bit here because I really need some explanations from the other 7 people as to what the hell was going on in their heads.
Down to the smallest thing, like hair loss, your teeth, like all the calcium, everything goes to the baby. Everything goes to the baby. You know, they had some sort of cancer, they lost an ovary, they lost something. And now these women are gonna be stuck with no identity, just like lost in the world because your whole purpose is to be a mother. And then it's wild because when you become a mother, it is not at all what it seems like. You know, it's not all Pinterest and cutesy what it seems like. It's super overwhelming.
Good fucking Lord.
There's a ton of hormones that run through your body, postpartum depression, all the things that happen to you. It's also the hardest, scariest, most terrifying thing I've ever done. So it doesn't bring me the same amount of joy because for as much joy as it brings me terror and fear. I have 3 little girls. One of them is disabled. The amount of, sleepless nights and stress and tears that it causes me is...
Okay, too long didn't listen? If you have children, you might regret it. Seems to be the summary there. You don't hear many parents admitting to that. In the ocean of parents insisting that you will regret it if you never have children, as though they're somehow able to ascertain that. Thank you, Crazy Face. I wouldn't want to be your child, but I appreciate your honesty.
I don't think it's important for women to become mothers, but I do think being a mother is important, but women should have the choice to indulge in motherhood. It shouldn't be like this thing that, perpetuate this idea that women should always be mothers.
That wasn't the motion. It wasn't always. It wasn't all women. It was women. As I suspected, you're hearing what you want to hear, and you're hearing specificity where there was only generalization.
I think that most women that don't have children will regret it, but I've met enough. I said most.
Yeah, she specified it. What the fuck was that noise? Even when someone is specifically saying not all, you still hear all. Can you, for a split fucking second at least, entertain the idea that reality is not necessarily what you transmogrify it into? this showed. Carry on, Pearl.
But I have met enough women that I don't see a nurturing bone in their body and are very self-centered that I don't think would benefit. Like, I don't think they could really be mothers and like raise the kids and put them first. So I think it depends on the person.
Based.
If we do agree that motherhood is important, I think we shouldn't look down on single moms. I think single motherhood is a very difficult thing, and I think the stigma against single moms is pretty negative. And kind of like what you said earlier, you know, like it's important for women to be moms. I think that also should apply to single moms as well.
Exactly.
You think it's important for women to be single mothers? That would imply that it's important for children not to have fathers. Dude, not only are you clearly a feminist, you're an experiment in the fringes of feminist extremism that was probably grown in a lab from a fucking potato. All right, I think we've covered this question enough. Moving on.
Andrew Tate is having a positive influence on society.
PSYOP, not interested, skip.
The men's rights movement is not as important as the feminist movement. Agreeers, step forward.
4 minutes, by the way. The feminists got 4 minutes of the edit to assert the motion that men's rights are less important than feminism before the disagreeers got to speak. It's almost as though the motion itself is indelible.
I don't think that it's to say that men's issues are less important than women's issues, because I think that feminism adequately addresses both issues.
Bro, you think women's issues are systemic, but men's issues are not. So you have two very different bars of adequacy at very different heights. Your idea of an adequate address to men's issues is to blame everything on men, while blaming men for everything being blamed on men. Pardon me while you miss me with that shit.
There are feminists who may in fact contribute to some of, you know, pervasive attitudes towards men. Like I always tell girls when they say things like, oh, he's not a real man unless he's like making 6 figures or something like that. I'm like, that's actually harmful, and that's something that like you should probably, it's in your best interest to also not perpetuate.
If you were to plot the pervasiveness of that attitude over time on the same graph as the pervasiveness of feminism over time, they would line up perfectly. You wouldn't even get 2 thin lines, you would get 1 thick line. Do you think that's a coincidence? Do you think women having delusionally high standards for men has any correlation with this ideology about how men have all the power and they owe it to women? Moron!
Feminism has been here as a historical movement and has achieved so much. And so it's ultimately the movement that we should all align with for, you know, gender equality and the end of gender depression.
Which feminism? The white one or the intersectional one? The trans-exclusive one or the trans-inclusive one? I get it. Feminism's not a monolith. But we should all align with it. And then we'll forever squabble amongst ourselves about which pigs are most equal.
I think real feminists are not the ones perpetuating those negative stereotypes of, oh, men need to be like this, men need to be providers, you're not a man if you can't do this, you're not a man if you can do that.
So what are you going to do about the feminists who are not real feminists? The ones who do nothing but bitch at men and their advocates. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to bitch at men and their advocates.
And so I think that real feminism kind of eliminates the need for that, for men's rights, because we just want everybody to be treated as individuals instead of, treating them differently based on their gender.
Unless they're men, in which case you eliminate any sense that they might need rights. All right, I think we're done with you.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people conflate feminism and misandry. And they just think, oh, if you're a feminist, that means you hate men and you want them all to, just suffer and, have a horrible life.
I cannot for the life of me imagine where anyone would get that impression.
And I feel like the people who think that's really their projection, because that's what their position is. Like when you're a men's rights activist and you're like, no, and you're so against feminism, it's because you think feminism is trying to replace the patriarchy with a matriarchy, and we're gonna rule just like they have.
We don't believe in the patriarchy of your feminist imaginings. We don't subscribe to your conspiracy theory. That doesn't mean we subscribe to the equal and opposite conspiracy theory. Yes, I know you'll never understand that. Such is the nature of being fractally wrong. I didn't coin fractally wrong, by the way. Look it up.
But that's not the goal of feminism. The goal of feminism is so that everybody can be the same.
Called it! Again, earlier in the video, communism on hormone blockers. Total homogeneity, even beyond the realm of possibility. Turning everyone into a hybrid race of light brownish, yellowish people is not exactly a desirable prospect, but at least it's physically possible. Eliminating the differences between men and women is not possible. It's utterly delusional. The only thing it can ever achieve is extinction. But they're doing it anyway. Feminists would rather have extinction than men's rights.
Gotcha. Let's bring in our disagreeers. And Isaac, let's start off with you.
So I agree with everything my fellow feminists are saying.
Of course you do. Wait, then what? I don't understand this show.
The more I thought about it, the more I realized that we could actually work together.
I'd like to think we can, but no, not until you unbrainwash yourself. The second thing you need to do is stop blaming men for everything. That right there is insurmountable bigotry. The first thing you need to do is stop blaming men for everything. That is clinically insane. All right, last but not least.
To me, I feel like kind of what I alluded to earlier, women do so much emotional labor for men. Men don't do anything for women. To me, I'm on this side. I agree with almost everything you guys have said this whole conversation.
But you don't consider that to be emotional labor. Oh yeah, I forgot, you're not a man. You're a particularly unkempt bonsai tree.
Most of the men's rights activists just blame women for everything.
Whoa! No, can't be bothered with you. Fuck off. All right, you three, give me your final thoughts.
I don't think a women's movement should have the monopoly on defining A, what men's issues are, and B, how to address them. Because I will say, decades of experience, feminism does not adequately address men's issues. When I ask feminists, what are you going to do about the boys' education gap? Half the time, they don't even know what it is.
Correct and based. The other half of the time, they just don't care. It's men's fault, after all. Nico, say something correct and based.
Men and women are supposed to go together.
There's no rule to that at all. So when you say that, they go together, that's just your own subjective opinion.
I didn't edit that. It's what appeared in Jubilee's video in that order. I couldn't ask for a more perfect encapsulation of this discussion. Feminist goes, we all need to come together. Non-feminist goes, men and women go together. Feminist goes, no, they don't. Golf clap to end all golf claps, my dude. The end. All right, Pearl, play us out.
So my final thought is, as a woman, we have the right to do whatever we want. And I don't know what really feminists are crying about. We can go get an abortion if we want one. We can go get birth control. We can go work. I can't think of anything we can't do. So to me, feminism is just a lot of crying and whining over nothing.
Correct and based. The same shit we've been saying for the last 10 years. I'm not quite sure what everyone's complaining about with regards to Pearl. When those daft bastards still exist in the world, and they're not just sat in a dark, musty room in Los Angeles dribbling on themselves, they're controlling the schools, controlling the airwaves, controlling the hospitals and the police and the armed forces and especially the governments and the HR departments everywhere. There's hundreds of millions of them. And one of them, possibly the worst one, the daftest bastard this mortal coil has ever churned up, could be 1 week away from leading the free world. If this doesn't scare you, then you scare me. Happy Halloween, everyone. Don't hit like, don't hit subscribe, don't hit the notification bell. None of it does anything. If you'd like to request something else for me to respond to, please do. Preferably via PayPal or Patreon or Subscribestar. I think I've comprehensively demonstrated that there is no pit of hell into which I won't lower myself for the right price. So make the most of it before my soul melts out of my arse. I said good day.